The SCP Foundation has discovered an unusual phenomenon, only seeming to occur within South Africa. More specifically, the anomaly in question has been directly observed by the NaTIS, the South African National Administration Traffic Information System, which serves as the country's national vehicle registry. If you're in America, think of them like the DMV. They record and manage all of the vehicle regulations and other relevant information for South Africa. But every so often, SCP-2942 will occur. What was first assumed to be a clerical glitch or an issue with an outdated registration software, every so often, an existing South African license plate number and NaTIS registration number are randomly reassigned. This on its own would hardly be enough of an issue to warrant the interest of the SCP Foundation. But what is so unusual about this random reassignment is that these pre-existing license plates and registration numbers will end up attached to vehicles that are, well, not exactly road safe. Let's put it that way. Each of the vehicles affected by SCP-2942 seem to fit the following criteria. They are universally not cars, all being vehicles that aren't recognized as conventional motor vehicles. The definition of vehicle affected by SCP-2942 seems to be a broad one, but typically none of those affected are intended or legally permitted to operate on land or to be driven on roads. And moreover, the affected vehicles are usually highly specialized and not designed for operation by civilian drivers. It doesn't appear that SCP-2942 transforms the vehicles it affects. There isn't any process by which civilian cars are being changed into specialized vehicles. Instead, SCP-2942 seems to assign legal ownership of things other than cars to civilian drivers. NaTIS previously recognized 4 different classes of transportation that were legal for citizens in South Africa to own and operate: common passenger vehicles, goods vehicles, trailers, and agricultural tractors. However, on the 1st of November in the year 2016, through some unknown, presumably anomalous means, SCP-2942 was somehow able to infiltrate the NaTIS computational system. This generated exactly 19 new vehicle classes that weren't previously approved by the SADT, the South African Department of Transport. Among the newly added vehicle classes were heavily armored combat vehicles weighing between 20 to 40,000 kilograms, any extra heavy armored combat vehicles with an additional 40 kilos in weight, large submersibles propelled by diesel-electric engines with a weight of 20,000 metric tons, any aircraft with vertical takeoff and landing or VTOL capabilities, and strangely, anything that was pulled by cattle on 2 wheels, whether powered by horses, mules, or oxen, were now considered vehicles by the NaTIS system. Efforts to undo this alteration have, thus far, proved unsuccessful. Any vehicle that was subsequently assigned a registration number through anomalous means via SCP-2942 has been designated by the SCP Foundation as SCP-2942-1. Each one that has since been recovered was found to have manifested a valid South African license plate on its exterior, one whose plate number matches that of an existing civilian vehicle. However, as if this wasn't enough of a seemingly pointless and arbitrary change, the true anomalous effects of SCP-2942 only becomes apparent from the perspective of the legal owner of the vehicle that has its registration number reassigned to an instance of SCP-2942-1. Imagine a car owner in South Africa driving along when suddenly their vehicle shuts down, seemingly with no cause. They might try to contact roadside assistance or get a mechanic to come out and help them, only for them to arrive and find that the car is in perfect working order. It's the driver that's not working. Upon activation of SCP-2942, the driver of an affected vehicle will become physically incapable of operating their car, regardless of the overall condition of the vehicle or its class according to the NaTIS. But simultaneously, they will also become capable of operating the instance of SCP-2942-1 that their existing registration number now corresponds to remotely, while still within the confines of their original vehicle, hereafter considered an instance of SCP-2942-2. The driver will be able to drive, pilot, or otherwise control the SCP-2942-1 instance that their license and registration numbers now correspond to. Say, if our unassuming South African driver tried putting their car's pedal to the metal when their vehicle stopped, They might be unknowingly accelerating a fighter jet, or turning the steering wheel might change the current course of an armored vehicle. Maybe slamming on the steering wheel to sound the horn might just make the pair of horses pulling the two-wheeled cart start whinnying. According to NaTIS data, only light to medium weight and capacity motor vehicles seem to be affected by SCP-2942. Once the phenomenon takes effect, the driver, known at this point as the remote operator, is the only person capable of taking control over the corresponding SCP-2942-1 instance, and the effects of this anomaly cannot be replicated through direct action either. Manually assigning one of the NaTIS's existing car registration numbers to another desired vehicle in a different class, or even generating a new series of numbers to assign, will not trigger SCP-2942. The phenomenon will only manifest independently of any human action. So, our driver. They've halted in the middle of the road, unknowingly now seated in the front seat of a car that has become an instance of SCP-2942-2. Naturally, their first instinct would be to turn the key, hoping to ignite the engine and restart their vehicle. However, doing so would instead activate their new corresponding SCP-2942-1 instance. Somewhere, a jet engine's turbine might roar into life, or a tank's tread might start to turn. Of course, the driver isn't present for this activation. They're still sitting in their car, at least to begin with. Upon the activation of a corresponding SCP-2942-1 instance, the remote operator will enter into a semi-dissociative state. During this time, they gain an increased sense of awareness, suddenly able to determine the physical location, the size and shape, and crucially, how to work the control systems of the SCP-2942-1 instance that now shares a registration number with their car. For those present to witness this accidental anomalous hijacking, a third facet of the SCP-2942 phenomenon will occur: the manifestation of SCP-2942-3. Those who are situated near the corresponding SCP-2942-1 instance now being operated remotely will observe a figure now sat in the cockpit or driver's seat, or will otherwise appear to be in control of the anomalously affected vehicle. Spectral analysis of these remote operator manifestations have revealed that each one of these, referred to as SCP-2942-3, possesses a dynamic thermal field with no identifiable source. They appear to be somewhat luminescent to the naked eye and can be interacted with, at least partially. SCP-2942-3 instances aren't intangible, consisting of a gelatinous mass of indeterminate composition. Some instances have been discovered to have 2 or more disembodied human hands inside, and in one case, an entire crash test dummy was manipulated and moved around as an example of SCP-2942-3. These manifestations will manipulate the controls of an SCP-2942-1 instance in such a manner that corresponds with the movements made by their remote operator counterpart. Each motion is simultaneous, matching those made within the driver's seat of SCP-2942-2 at the time. The remote operator pushing down on the accelerator pedal in their vehicle might cause their corresponding SCP-2942-3 instance to increase the throttle of a light aircraft. The synchronicity of these actions is unaffected by the distance between the linked vehicles. However, they may be slowed or altered slightly, depending on the level of complexity of an SCP-2942-1 instance. In short, there are a lot more switches and instruments in a fighter jet than in a mid-sized sedan. While the remote operator in their dissociative state will possess an awareness of the operation of their corresponding vehicle, a lack of any prior experience in driving or piloting their SCP-2942-1 instance can lead to a significantly high risk of accidents. During one of the incidents logged by the SCP Foundation, a Sikorsky HH-60 Pave Hawk helicopter became the corresponding SCP-2942-1 to a 2012 Ford Fiesta hatchback. This helicopter, formerly in use by the Republic of Korea Air Force, was subsequently crashed by the remote operator within the Ford Fiesta, an incident that resulted in the death of 3 Republic of Korea Air Force officers who were aboard the Pave Hawk for training exercises. The true cause of the accident was buried when the SCP Foundation arrived, labeling it as the result of human error, while the affected Pave Hawk and the hatchback were recovered and transferred to Foundation ownership. The pilots who were lucky enough to survive the crash were told that the apparition they'd seen taking control of the helicopter was a result of their head trauma. Another notable instance of the SCP-2942 phenomenon took place when a 1998 Volkswagen Type II Combi became linked to a Liebherr mobile construction crane, allowing the driver to take control of the large, potentially dangerous piece of construction equipment. The crane was performing building work at a construction site in Gauteng, South Africa, and due to the actions of the unwitting remote operator, the building that was still under construction was destroyed. The one fortunate side to the incident was that the structure was unoccupied at the time, and no construction workers were present at the site at the time that the crane was being controlled by an SCP-2942-3 manifestation. Had more people been present, there likely would have been numerous casualties when the building collapsed. The Foundation swept in soon after, seizing the crane and the corresponding SCP-2942-2 vehicle, covering the accident up as the result of a mechanical fault. The narrowly avoided casualties of that incident became a horrific reality during another SCP-2942 occurrence. The Aberdeen Express, a steam-powered train providing rail tours to tourists in Scotland, became the SCP-2942-1 instance connected to a 2003 Volkswagen City Golf. The conductor of the train was terrified to discover the presence of tentacles emerging from the back of the locomotive's cab and seizing the various control levers. The conductor was the only survivor of the incident, leaping out of the train only moments before it was flipped off the tracks and sent crashing down an incline, killing every passenger aboard. Not every occurrence of SCP-2942 has resulted in deaths or injuries, however. Some remain notable for their uniquely bizarre manifestations of SCP-2942-3. When a 2004 Kia Sportage 4x4 driver took control of a fishing boat located at a marina in Manchester, New Hampshire, the Regional Coast Guard intervened. The outboard motor vessel was seen entering restricted waters, being manned by an emaciated, single-armed human torso. The witnesses who saw this manifestation of SCP-2942-3 were later interviewed and amnesticized by the Foundation. And then there was the case of Mohammed S.K. Batari, a 44-year-old man earning a living as a rickshaw puller, residing in Kolkata, India. When a 2013 Opel Corsa in South Africa became affected by SCP-2942, the remote operator was able to take direct control of Batari's rickshaw, as well as of Batari himself. SCP-2942-3 took on two distinct manifestations during this incident. Psychologically, an invasive consciousness assumed control over Mohammed Batari's motor functions, but this didn't make him the sole puppet that the remote operator drove the rickshaw with. There was also a large Japanese spider crab that was latched onto Batari's head. To this date, this incident represents the only time that SCP-2942 has affected a human in this way. The SCP-2942 phenomenon only ceases once the remote operator exits their SCP-2942-2 vehicle. At this point, the corresponding instances of SCP-2942-1 will shut down, and the manifestation of SCP-2942-3 controlling it will disappear. However, the phenomenon can be repeated by having a remote operator re-enter their vehicle, which will remain connected to the corresponding SCP-2942-1 instance, unless either vehicle is crashed or destroyed. The Foundation has learned that through repeated sessions, the remote operator's abilities in controlling the corresponding vehicle will improve over time. The only way proven to nullify SCP-2942 is to conduct a lengthy due legal process in order to remove the remote operator as the owner of the vehicle with the registration and license details that correspond to their original vehicle. The Foundation requires the written consent of these drivers to conduct the cancellation of vehicle ownership. However, personnel have no qualms about this being provided voluntarily. Incidents involving SCP-2942 are dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Current Foundation protocols dictate that affected vehicles are to be re-registered to members of Foundation personnel in order to repurpose SCP-2942-1 instances. So, if a tank becomes remotely operated by an SCP-2942-3 manifestation, that's a new tank for the Foundation's arsenal. Each newly recovered instance of SCP-2942-1 is provided to one of a pool of Foundation personnel through the assistance of undercover agents embedded within the South African Department of Transport in order to help the process along. Now check out SCP-096's scariest battle with an F-35 fighter jet and the plane that never was, SCP-787, for more.